Hi guys, and welcome back to another tutorial. If you're new to this channel, don't forget to like, share, comment and also subscribe to the channel if you're yet to do so. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you guys how I was able to make this short bubu with a built-up neckline. So here are the fabrics I'll be working with. I'll be using 3 yards of this 3-tone Ankara print fabric, and I also have 1 yard of this black crepe fabric as well. So let's jump right into the cutting process. So the first thing I did was to fold my fabric into 2, and I cut out 22 inches so that it's easy for me to cut out the back. So I went ahead to mark the top line right there for the basis of all my measurements. So on this line, I went ahead to mark half of my shoulder measurement. So half of my shoulder measurement is 16 divided by 2, that's 8. From that line, I went ahead to mark 11 inches as my sleeve extension. So you can also get this measurement by measuring from the back of your neck down to where you want your sleeve to stop. Then come down by 1.5 inches at that point there to create your shoulder line. So I'll also be attaching a band to that point of my sleeve. Now for the length of my gown, I'll be using the full length of the Ankara, which is 44 inches. So now to create the sleeve opening, I came down by I think 12 inches. So this measurement depends on your size. So yours can be 10, 11, but mine is 12. So 1 inch would be the seam allowance to close the side. So I also went ahead to mark the same measurement at this point so that I have a straight line. So I'll go ahead and connect the lines together like this. So to mark out the line for my sleeve opening, I just slanted my ruler like this and made that connection so it's not straight. So at this point, I would be taking a neck width of 2.5 inches. Remember, this is the back, so my neck depth is 1 inch. And I'll create a neckline curve for the back. At this point right here, I went ahead to mark a quarter of my hip measurement. So 42 divided by 4 is 10.5 plus 5 inches, I have 15.5. So I marked that right there, and I also marked the same 15.5 inches at the hem of the dress. Don't forget that this is a bubu, so it has to be free. So just divide your hip measurement by 4 and add extra 5 inches or 6 inches to it. It all depends on how big you want the bubu to be. So I connected the points together, and at this point here, I'll just try to connect my sleeve opening into the side seam line like so in a curved manner. I just went back in with my hand to make sure that the curve is more pronounced. So that is done. The next thing I did was to just cut out the back, and while cutting out the shoulder area, I made sure to add half an inch seam allowance to join the front and back together. After cutting out the back, the next thing is to cut out the front. So I went ahead to fold my fabric into 2 like this, making sure that all edges are equal, and I place the back on the front like so. So I will first of all transfer or cut out exactly how the back is on the front like so. But the only difference is that the front is going to have a deeper neckline, and we're going to split open the front. So here I just tried to make sure that everything was well placed, and I went ahead to cut out the front. So after cutting out the front, I will be making adjustment to the front neckline. Remember that the back neck depth is 1 inch, so I placed my tape right there and I went ahead to mark 11 inches. So after marking this, I would go ahead and connect the points. So I created a V-shaped neckline for the front, after which I cut out the neckline and then proceeded to splitting the front into 2. So the front should look like this when you're done. So the bubu has pockets, and I need to mark the points where I'm going to be sewing the pockets. Remember that the neckline for the front is 11 inches. So I placed my tape measure like this, and I went ahead to mark 19 inches. And I repeated the same thing on the other side. So that's probably 2 inches below my waistline. After which I came inwards by 3 inches from my center front. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side as well. To create the pockets, I cut out a fabric that is 8.5 inches in length with a width of 9.5 inches. I also cut out a black strip of fabric that is 2 inches on fold. So I have 4 inches in total, and it's the same here. So the next thing I would do is to take this to my sewing machine, and I'll be stitching them together by a 0.5 each allowance. So I'm done joining the pieces together. The next thing I'll be doing is to fold half an inch on the 3 sides of the pocket. and I'll go ahead and press it with my iron. So I'll repeat the same thing here. After ironing the sides, the next thing is to attach the pockets to the bubu. So it's very important that you do this before you close the sides of the bubu, else it's going to be more difficult for you to sew. So I place the pocket on that point where I marked for the pocket, and I'll take this to my sewing machine, and I'm just going to top stitch round. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. I'll place the pocket on the line where I marked, and I'll take this to my sewing machine and sew round. Here's what you should have after attaching the pockets to your fabric. After you're done attaching your pockets, go ahead and join the shoulders of both the front and back together like this. So I place them together like so. I'll take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew by half an inch seam allowance. So I'm done joining the shoulders. Remember I said I was going to attach a band on the sleeve. So I took the measurement of what I have here and it was 23.5. So I just went ahead to measure the other part of the sleeve to be sure that both measurements are correct. Now for the band, I went ahead to cut out this strip of fabric. On a fold, I have 2.5 inches, so the full width of the fabric is 5 inches. So I'll take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to join the two pieces of fabric together by half an inch seam allowance. So I'll do the same thing here. I'm done sewing them together. So to close the side seam, you're going to flip your fabric like this. Place right side to right side together, and then from the sleeve area I'm going to be sewing by 1 inch all the way down to the hem. So I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other side. Place your fabric right side to right side like so, and then from the sleeve area I'll go ahead and sew by 1 inch all the way down. After closing up the sides, I decided to reduce the length of the dress. Remember that I was working with the actual length of the Ankara, which is 44 inches, but I wanted the dress to be a little bit shorter. So I went upwards by 3 inches and I cut that out. So this will be the new length for the bubu. So the next thing I did was that from one hem of the dress, I measured over to the other hem of the dress. So you're also going to include the measurements of both the front and back necklines together. This is to ensure that you have the right length for the strip of fabric for the front. So I had a total of 90.5. So I cut out a piece of fabric that was 5 inches wide and it was over 19.5 inches. I notched the midpoint of the black fabric and I also went ahead to notch the center point of the back neckline like this. Before attaching the black fabric to the dress, I went ahead to take the measurements of the front neckline. So when I measured from my shoulder along that my front neckline, I had 11.5 inches. So I just marked that out there. So I repeated the same process on the other side. Measure what you have from your shoulder down to the point where your front depth stops and mark that out. You're also going to measure your back neckline. So from the notch area, measure down to where the shoulder of the front and back meets for just one part. Keep that measurement in mind. Now on this strip of fabric, you're going to combine both the measurements you got for one side of the front neckline and the back neckline. So from here, I have I think about 16 inches. So from this center point of this black strip of fabric, we're going to mark 16 inches downwards like this. And then from this point where I marked the 16 inches, I'm going to take this to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew on a straight line right there at the center all the way down to the hem. At this point, I was done making the stitch from here all the way down. What you're going to do is that you're going to pick this part, you're going to flip it over to this side like this, and then you're going to flip it like so, like this. Very simple. You just need to pay attention and probably check what I did earlier to be sure that you're right on track. So I'm just going to take my time to properly arrange the fabric like this, and then I would also notch the midpoint of this fabric right here. So now you're going to bring back your main dress and then you're going to place the notched parts together at the back like this. And from that notch part at the center back, you're going to make a stitch right there across the necklines, that is both the front and back necklines. Now when you get to this front neckline part, you're going to make sure that the point where you marked for your front neckline matches up with the point where you started making your stitch on the middle of the black fabric. So So I'm going to just essentially repeat the same thing on the other side, and then I will show you guys the final results. So if you got my explanation correctly, this is what you should have as your final result. So the dress is all ready. I also went ahead to hem the dress and also overlock the raw edges, and what is left now is to give the dress a good press. And that is it, guys. I hope you've learned something from this video.